to sign in on my workstation. And in this case, I have 2019 set up as a workstation. But this could be Windows 10, any client that you want to use to join the domain. I need to check some things out. So I don't know if you guys can see this background. So how about that? There. And remember, it was 192.168.70.15 was our first domain controller. And 16 was our second domain controller. Okay. So that's good, but we haven't set up DHCP yet. Now, once we set up DHCP, it'll auto-configure everything. All of our new clients won't have to worry about setting up their DNS or anything like that. But for now, without DHCP, I need to change this, okay? And since we're on a GUI right now, we'll just do that graphically. So and we'll just go to control panel and network and sharing, change adapter settings, double click, properties, go here, version 4, and these are our IPs. So I'm going to make that first domain controller, wait a minute, gateway. First domain controller, my preferred DNS server. When I do this, I'm going to lose communication with the internet, and but that's okay. Like I said, remember, we'll set up DNS forwarding when we're done. So I'm going to go ahead and change that. And just verify that, right? So now 192.168.70.15. Right, so that destroyed my communication with the outside world. That destroyed my communication with the internet, but I need that to be able to contact the domain controller to do the next step, to join the domain. So I can do this here. I click on a workgroup, and I'll show you another way. If you go to control panel, you can also click on system, and then system will bring this up, and then if you wanted to, under change settings, and I could change it this way. Either way. Okay. So in this case, I'm going to click here, I'm going to click here, I want to join a domain, and I'm going to say Skynet. And I could say Skynet.ai, but you can just use the first part of the domain if you want to. So I'm just going to say domain Skynet. And then computer, in this case, remember, it has to be someone from that domain who has the permission to join computers to the domain. And I don't want it to be from the local computer, so I have to specify the name of Active Directory, right? And administrator. That's the account I have that has permission, domain admin permission to join computers to the domain. And I'll enter my password, super secret password, super secret password. Okay, and then notice it says welcome to the Skynet domain. And then I need to restart. And then when I do, I'll have the option to both log on locally and sign into the domain. Okay, so let's sign in. And on this first sign in, who am I? See? It's the host name. So I'm signed in locally. But look, my primary DNS suffix is skynet.ai. So I'm a part of that domain. So watch this. All right, that's local, but if I click other user, now I can sign into the domain, see? And if I use a domain account, there, specify Skynet. And in this case, this is a whole new profile, a whole new user profile. So I have to configure it the way that I like it, and right. And let's see. Let's add some shortcuts there that I want. Okay, and I'm going to go over to my last profile, my local profile, and let's see. I liked all those shortcuts I had. So ADUC, RDP, Windows Admin Center, PowerShell. Yeah, those are all pretty good. Pretty good things to keep there. So I'm just setting up a new profile here, right? And Alright, so now I'm signed in as a member of Skynet on this server, okay? On this server. And if I open up Active Directory users and computers, voila, now we can see Active Directory, right? There's our Active Directory database. And here's our built-in users. Okay. And let's just create a quick account here for administrative purposes. I'm going to make a new user, and we'll call her Twilight Sparkle. And our Twilight Sparkle at skynet.ai. And we'll set her an account, and we'll make her our domain admin, okay? So she's a domain user, and now we can use her account to do administrative things. We're gonna add computers and come on, Twilight Sparkle, she's the nerd penny. Everybody knows that she would be a domain admin, right? All right, so there's Active Directory. I can access that from my workstation now that I've joined the domain and now that I'm signed in as a domain user. And now that gives me a central point of authentication, because if I wanted to, and if I wanted to sign in, what was it, Twilight Sparkle, and See? So even though I created her account in AD, I can sign into any workstation, any server, any computer. That's a part of Active Directory using her account. So it's one of the key advantages of Active Directory. It gives you centralized authentication. But again, we'll talk about those things later. Okay. And same thing. She's, every time I sign in, it creates another profile. So and let's see, server manager. And we'll grab that and the edge. And we'll go and grab from our local profile here. And ADAC and ADUC and let's see what else, RDP, all those shortcuts that we painstakingly configure Windows Admin Center and our PowerShells. We'll add the shortcuts for Twilight as well, okay? And okay. And since she's a domain admin, she can access and control AD too. See? Okay. And we are just going to run Windows Admin Center. And the first time through, we'll need to add some servers. All right. And remember it was T3000 DC1 and T3000 DC2. Okay. Add the server name as entered. And I'm going to choose another one, T3000 DC2. Okay, so now they've been added to Windows Admin Center. If I want to browse these, okay, so I can access all of these servers, RDP, remote PowerShell. We've gone over that in other videos, but since this video is supposed to be all about installing Active Directory on core servers, one of the cool things you can do with, and Windows Admin Center, by the way, but one of the cool things you can do when you have domain controllers and you have Active Directory is you can go click here on the settings, and you can go to extensions. And in this case, I want to install the Active Directory extension, okay? So I'm going to choose that option and click install. Okay, now if I click over here under install extensions, there's Active Directory. And with that done, I'm going to go back to Windows Admin Center. Now watch what happens. When I load a domain controller, look, I have Active Directory now, added in as an extension. So along with roles and features and remote PowerShell and RDP and all the things that we've gone over in previous videos, now we have Active Directory things, okay, or things related to Active Directory. And look at all the different things we could browse here related to AD. Okay, so there's that. And now I have access to ADUC. All right, very useful for managing users and groups and computer objects. Notice here's my workstation, right, my computer, but here are my two domain controllers, T3000 DC1 and DC2. That's ADUC. There's ADAC. ADUC is Active Directory Users and Computers. ADAC is Active Directory Administrative Center. And ADAC, just sort of definitely a more verbose. You know, there's a lot more to ADAC than ADUC. When you want to find something quick and easy, ADUC is your tool of choice. And when you want to drill down into the details, ADAC would be your tool of choice. But let's say I want to do a global search. I'll look for Twilight. And there she is, Twilight Sparkle. Okay, there's my user account. And I can open her up in ADAC and get all these details about her and access things about her account. Unlock her account, do all kinds of things. See? So that's ADAC. Again, we'll go over that in much more detail in other videos that focus on that. Because that's just hours and hours of content. We're just trying to focus on installing AD in these few videos here, right? But same thing in ADA. Look, if I search for her, right, fine. And there's Twilight Sparkle. And here's her account, see? So we'll go over that in more detail a bit. I'm just trying to show you the ropes, I guess. Okay. So Active Directory setup, we have a server joined. And in this case, it's a 2019 workstation. I use it as a workstation, a management server, but we'll look at one more client. Okay, now that I have Active Directory installed and two domain controllers, what I want to do is set up DNS forwarding. And to do that, I need to set up some tools on my 2019 Management Workstation here. So this is the one I have for my GUI. And we'll do one with Windows 10 too. We'll set up RSET tools. But RSET tools isn't needed when you're using 2019 as a client, a management workstation. In this case, it's built in. And I just want to run Server Manager, right? Which that normally loads up at boot. But I closed it and opened it just so we could start from scratch. I want to add roles and features. I'm going to jump down to server selection. I'm going to select my management workstation here. And I'm going to jump down to features. And I want to scroll down to remote server administration tools. And specifically what I need are these DNS server tools here. But while I'm at it, because I'm going to be using this as a management workstation, I'm going to add in some other tools too that I'll be using later. So BitLocker, let's see, some clustering tools, not IPM, no. Okay, we're okay there. Hyper-V management tools, maybe we'll do that later. Remote desktop services tools, okay. Certificate services tools, DHCP server tools, DNS tools, and I'll do rights management. File services, let's see. Remote access, management tools, volume activation. I'm just throwing in, so all I need was DNS, okay, specifically to set up DNS forwarding. But I figured while I was at it, I'd throw in some other tools that I'll use later. So anyway, you just want to select DNS and next and install. And we can close it, but I like to leave it open so I can watch the progress. And installation succeeded. Okay. So if I go to Windows Administrative Tools, now I have DNS, okay? And this is specifically the tool. And this is the only one we needed to install as a management tool, just to set up DNS forwarding. But again, those other tools, we'll be using them in later videos and things, so I figured I'd just go ahead and install them on my workstation. All right, so I'm going to open up DNS. And I don't want to choose this computer because this computer, my management workstation, is not a DNS server. My DNS servers are on my 2 domain controllers. They implement Active Directory integrated DNS, so I want to select one of those 2. And the particular computer is T3000 DC1. I'm going to select my first domain controller. Okay. All right. And now you can see, in this case, here are the A records, right? So they map a host name to an IP. And they've been created for domain controllers and also for members, in this case workstations or member servers. All right. So there's Unicorn 1 and there's T3000 DC2. There's a record for T3000 DC1. And those A records just map the host name to the IP. There's a reverse lookup zone if I wanted to set up pointer records, in which case we'd map an IP to a host name. And there's also, global catalog information and SRV records and things that are set up. Okay, so all that was part of the Active Directory setup process. Anyway, besides a brief overview of Active Directory integrated DNS, and remember, ADI or Active Directory integrated DNS, it uses replication to transfer DNS zone information from one DNS server to another. So, and they're all multi-master, readable and writable models. So it's not like traditional DNS or bind DNS where you just have one DNS server that's writable and then it'll push or pull, and then you have other servers that are sort of read-only. In this instance, every single DNS server, if it's Active Directory integrated, has an editable, writable copy of the DNS database and DNS records, and that information gets replicated to the other DNS servers as part of the Active Directory replication process. But we'll go over that in more detail in later videos. Maybe we'll do one just devoted to DNS, but this is still part of the Active Directory setup process, and we just wanted to do set up DNS forwarding. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to go to Properties. And in Properties, I want to go to the Forwarders tab. And here, I just want to add the IP address of any server that I'm going to forward queries to, in this case, to reach the internet. And so I want to go to 192, get my numbers like on there, 192.168.70.2 is a server that I have. And that is, external to the internet. And I'm gonna add Google in here, 8.8.8.8 as a forwarder. Okay. Okay. So now I've set up DNS forwarding. I'm gonna click Apply. And that's on T3000 DC1. Okay. But I also want to do the same thing on T3000 DC2. So I'm going to go T3000 DC2. That's the host name of my other core 2019 core domain controller. And same thing here. Notice that, we have the same record information, all right? It's replicated between domain controllers. And as I did with the first, I'm going to right click Properties, Forwarders, and I'm going to edit, and I'm going to do external 192.168.70.2, and I'm going to do Google 8.8.8.8. Okay. And then I'm going to click OK and Apply and OK. Okay. So now I've created the ability for my hosts to resolve name queries outside my domain just by setting up DNS forwarding. So all my hosts will need is the DNS server IP address of a domain controller, which has that ADI or Active Directory Integrated DNS, and that local DNS server in my domain will then be able to forward external queries to the internet. So let's take a look at that, right? I have configured here as a DNS server right here, my first domain controller. And actually, I'm going to add, later when we set up DHCP, we'll add a secondary and maybe a tertiary DNS server address. But right now, one of the things I want to do is for fault tolerance, in case one DNS server / domain controller goes down, we want the other to be able to function, right? So I'm going to change that in network settings. Adapter settings, double click, properties, IP version 4, and for my alternate DNS server 192.168.70 and 16, which is the IP address of domain controller 2. Okay, so now if I check my IP settings, there I have a primary and a secondary DNS. And that's internal all to my domain. I have no way to reach the internet in this instance, or in this case, without that DNS forwarding being set up. So I can ping, in this case, T3000 DC1 and DC2. And if I wanted to go outside my domain and resolve a name, I can ping Yahoo, right? I can ping Google. Because I have DNS forwarding set up. And now on my workstations and my management client, if I so choose, I can access the internet. My favorite news tabloid, Yahoo. And you thought it was a search engine. Okay, so that's just DNS forwarding, and sort of maybe one of the last things you might do in the initial setup of Active Directory before you start configuring it. And good grief, we could just make hundreds of videos on configuring AD and all the bits and pieces of it. So to try to make this video shorter, we'll try to just focus on, like I said, the immediate installation tasks of Active Directory. And I would consider, even though setting up DNS forwarding is part of DNS, I would consider that part of the Active Directory setup process, because you're not really done until you configure it. Okay. But we'll go into more detail. A lot more detail. We'll do maybe a series of videos just on DNS, because there's so much to it, but it deserves a separate series of videos all by itself.